objects. I mean, I've found the thing. There's an interesting story of a guy who, his name was Seth Tanner. And Seth Tanner was a Mormon guy who came down from Utah in the late 1800s. He had to flee Utah, essentially. He was a wanted man. He had been part of this famous Mormon massacre in Utah. As federal troops went into Utah, he fled into the Grand Canyon, as did a number of Mormon pioneers who the law was after. And what a lot of these guys did was they went into the Grand Canyon, particularly the northern area, and they prospected. They created, one guy created a ferry, Lee's Ferry. They went up many old trails and things like that. And this guy, Seth Tanner, in fact, a lot of things in the Grand Canyon are named after this guy. There's a Tanner Trail, there's Tanner Wash, there's a Tanner Canyon, particularly up in northern Arizona and around the Navajo Indian Reservation, which does include part of the Grand Canyon. This guy is really famous. And a weird thing happened to him. I was able to find a photograph of him from the late 1800s. He, according to the stories, and it's hard to find information, but I've been poring over old books on the Grand Canyon and stuff. This guy did a lot of prospecting in really remote areas of the Grand Canyon, and the area that I identified a lot where these things were going on was where the Little Colorado meets the Grand Canyon, and that is its own canyon in itself, the Little Colorado Canyon. This guy, Seth Tanner, at some point, he went into some kind of a cave, and the Hopi Indians caught him there, and he was in some sacred place, some forbidden secret spot that no one was allowed to see, but he saw it. Now, normally they would have killed him, except he had several wives, and one of his wives was a Hopi Indian. So instead of killing him, they blinded him, and they threw some kind of acid or something in his face, and he became blind. And that was, for them, that was good enough. And he spent the rest of his life as a blind old man in various villages around the Grand Canyon. Children and other people would have to lead him around and feed him. And there were some photos taken of him, and you can see him. He's got his eyes open. He's clearly is blind, and he's a bushy old prospector guy. His name was Seth Tanner. And from what I can tell, what happened was and this was before the 1909 article in the Phoenix Gazette. Yeah, he had stumbled into these secret caves in the Grand Canyon and would have been killed, except he was blinded. I've also found that there's a couple of movies that are basically also based on this story. One is the great Gregory Peck Western called McKenna's Gold. And that movie, and in my mind, that's a great Western. That movie, too, is about this secret city in the Grand Canyon. There's mining is involved. One of the things that's in this area, too, is a special Hopi salt mine. That mine is off limits today, and certain Hopi elders are allowed to go down into the Grand Canyon to this salt mine, but other visitors are not allowed into that area. And in my mind, this seems to be around the area where Seth Tanner was doing his prospecting, where he found some cave, where he was blinded, and it seems to be what also the place that the 1909 Phoenix Gazette article was talking about.
Hopi legend also talks about ancestors to the Hopis once living in an underground world in the Grand Canyon, and that could also explain some of this stuff. Well,
that's right. I mean, as you start to look into this whole thing, there's Egyptian city in the Grand Canyon. It also has to do, apparently, with Hindus and Buddhists coming from ancient India and stuff like that. And the Hopi Indians are absolutely part of it. Their own legends of their own origin, like as you're saying, is that they lived underground in the Grand Canyon with the ant people. And this was during, the Hopis also have the same kind of mythology as the Aztecs and the Mayans, and the Olmecs had this too. where the world has been destroyed many times in the past, 4 or 5 times, and we're living in either the fourth or the fifth world, depending on the Aztec or Mayan, and the Hopis have that too. So during these periodic destructions and cataclysms, the Hopi at one point went underground, lived deep beneath the earth, in the Grand Canyon somewhere, and they lived with these ant people, they said, and then they emerged, after the cataclysms were over and the New World was born. They emerged from a hole in the Grand Canyon, a place called the Sipapu. And that's a place in the Grand Canyon you can also, you can find some photographs of it. It's near to the Hopi salt mines. It's near to where all these things are named after this tanner guy. And it is like a hole in the ground. You're not allowed to go there either. And this is something else you'll find, as I did. We started researching this. There's a lot of places in the Grand Canyon that are off limits. It's
you mean legally
controlled?
Okay.
Gets a lot of visitors too every year. But if you want to go hiking the Grand Canyon and go places, you have to apply in advance. There's a number of areas that are utterly off limits. And weird secret places. There's another strange thing about the Grand Canyon. If you look at a map of the Grand Canyon and all of the many different formations, they've given them names. But they've given them these Egyptian and Hindu and Buddhist names.
Isn't that
like
incredible?
Shiva Temple, Temple of Cheops, Osiris Temple, Buddha Temple, things like that. So that was kind of strange right there, too, that for some unknown reason, perhaps just coincidence, so much stuff in the Grand Canyon has all these Egyptian and Hindu, Buddhist.
Who gave them those names, David?
Well, again, early prospectors and things like that. And, some of the formations in the Grand Canyon, like the Cheops Pyramid, they look like, pyramids from a distance. So they're given those names. But there's just such a plethora of these names all through the Grand Canyon and linked to that. A curious thing, too, with so many of the Indian tribes around here, the Hopis, the Zunis, you have the different Pueblo Indians. The Zunis who live also near the Grand Canyon, but they live near Gallup, right along the Arizona-New Mexico border, although part of the Zuni reservation is in Arizona. But some years ago, University of Oregon anthropologist wrote a book about the Zunis, and in her studies, she found that the Zunis were speaking ancient Japanese. How about that?
Jeez.
And in fact, if you go to Zuni, I was just there recently, and she talks about this in her book. The Zuni names are very kind of standard kind of Japanese names, like the ones that we think of today, like Hayakawa and things like that, Kawasaki. These are normal Zuni names. Zunis have also been sent to Japan and are sort of easily able to learn Japanese kind of thing. So you have a whole idea that the area around the Grand Canyon, around the Four Corners area, Flagstaff, also around Phoenix. All that area was much more developed 1,000, 1,500 years ago. In fact, all around Phoenix, Phoenix is an aptly named city. There are ancient concrete canals that intersect all around Phoenix. And the modern city of Phoenix is still using these canals today. The Hohokam Indians who lived around Phoenix and Casa Grande, they irrigated the whole desert. They built 3-story concrete buildings like Casa Grande.
Let's find out if the Egyptians did come here, David, when we come back. How did they migrate here? We'll be back. We're with the great adventurer, David Hatcher Childress. David, if Egyptians migrated here to the North Americas, when might they have done it, and how do you think they got here?
Well, probably the Egyptians came to the North America at least by about 1000 BC. That would be 3,000 years or so ago. They would naturally have come by boats. I mean, it's one of the enigmas of, say, the ancient Egyptians. You go to ancient Egypt, you